twilight of my life. It is prophetic that I am forever challenged to balance music's joy with war's anguish. I was invited by President Theodore Roosevelt to perform at the White House in 1904. That was 2 months before my Carnegie Hall debut, playing Richard Strauss's Don Quixote under the composer's baton. And 10 years before the outbreak of World War I, my life has been intertwined with deep passions for music and peace. I ponder how such a magnificent composer as Strauss aligned himself with the Third Reich. The joys of music, the anguish of war.
I was again invited to perform at the White House, this time by President Kennedy. Eisenhower's American post-war policy to combat the advancement of communism in Europe turned a blind eye to Franco's dictatorial regime that had cozied up to Hitler and Mussolini during the war. Franco's repressive dictatorship was responsible for the murder of hundreds of thousands of Pau's countrymen.
I have maintained my self-imposed refusal to perform in allied countries that have tacitly supported Franco. After serious deliberation, I accepted the invitation to the White House, which included a 45-minute meeting with the President. I expressed my displeasure with the United States and its allies' neutrality during Spain's civil war, and urged him to withhold future aid to Franco's authoritarian regime. I was impressed with the President's idealism and frankness in his response.
You are right, but a president inherits policies he may not agree with. I am committed to worldwide freedom, but a president cannot always do what he would like to do.
At the evening concert attended by Stokowski, Normandy, Bernstein, Copeland, and Barber, President Kennedy
supporting the overthrow of Franco and the creation of a democratic republic in my homeland. Now in the twilight of my life, I am compelled to reflect on my mortal existence. I was born in the Catalan Mediterranean seaside village of El Vendrell, exactly 100 years after the 13 colonies joined to form the United States of America.
And it was nearly your death date as you came into the world, blew from strangulation with the umbilical cord twisted around your neck. And it was some time before you drew your first breath.
My parents named me Pau, peace in Catalonian. My father Carlos was a beautiful musician with pure natural talent, but lacked the training to become an outstanding composer. He was a modest man and a strict disciplinarian, parish organist and choir master, who tutored me in piano, songwriting, violin, and organ. Father was also politically active, another quality absorbed into my soul. Father opposed Madrid's blue blood connections to Louis XIV's Bourbon monarchy and dreamed of a federalist republic of semi-independent states.
Carlos would have Pau stand behind the piano and name the notes and scales that the patriarch was playing. At the age of 4, Pau could play the violin, piano, and flute. At the age of 6, he played the violin well enough to perform a solo in public.
When I was 6, I heard a traveling musician who played a fascinating cello strung broom handle. So I pleaded with Father to build one for me. The crude instrument had a chord resonating soundbox. At age 11, I listened to a real cello for the first time and decided I wanted to dedicate my life to exploring this instrument with such a special sound. Even though Father wanted me to become a carpenter, he presented me with a small cello.
Recognizing Pau's gift and over vehement objections from Carlos, Doña Villa moved to Barcelona with Pau so he could study at the municipal waltzes and arias in a trio, 7 nights a week at the coffee toast to help pay for his lessons.
When I was 13, during one of his visits, Father purchased my first adult-sized cello. We strolled along the beautiful tree-lined neoclassic mansions on Avenida Ramblas. We passed the enormous monument of Columbus, with one hand raised, pointing to the Mediterranean, and the other grasping a parchment, perhaps a navigational map for future voyages. With my new cello in hand, we rambled through narrow streets, visiting second-hand stores, rummaging for cello music. I spied a dark brown score with fancy black letters in one shop. 6 sonatas or suites for violoncello by Johann Sebastian Bach. I clutched the music just like Columbus grasped the parchment at the monument, and began studying the first prelude, which coincidentally seemed to coincide with our leisurely walk home.
Practiced the sweets daily for 12 years before mustering the courage to play the sweets in public.
Yes, the feelings I experienced while working on these suites were among the purest and most intense of my artistic life. For me, Bach is like Shakespeare. He has known all and felt all. He is everything. When people ask me how I play Bach, I play him as the pianist plays Chopin. There is such fantasy in Bach, but fantasy with order.
Having won first prizes in cello, piano, and composition, matriculated from Barcelona's music school at age 17.
It was time for me to move to Madrid. The composer, Isaac Albéniz, who had heard me perform at the cafe, wrote an introductory letter on my behalf, which I presented to the Queen Regent, a patron of music.
After listening to Pau's performance, the Count arranged for Pau to present a private recital at the Royal Palace. That led to a recital for the Queen Regent, who granted Pau a monthly stipend, allowing his family to live in a modest garret just across the street from the palace.
We shared the space with women cigar makers, a shoemaker, and others. I could pass freely between our modest accommodations and the palace. Count de Morphy tutored me in rhetoric and the affairs of state, studying from the same books that were to be used by what was to be Spain's last king, Alfonso XII. As part of my education, I attended debates, and the Count had me visit the Prado to write a weekly essay on a painting that impressed me. A deep appreciation and love of art blossomed from this exposure.
While the age gap was significant, Alfred games with the 7-year-old king. Alfonso once confided that while he liked music, his passion was playing with toy soldiers and cannons.
I performed cello repertoire weekly for Queen Maria Cristina, an accomplished pianist. We often played duets. This great and gracious lady was a second mother to me.
While Pau enjoyed a warm relationship with the Queen and benefited from royal favor, this never altered his love of liberty and freedom from the authoritarian rule of the monarchy.
I was 19 when our family moved to Brussels and eventually to Paris without a royal stipend. We were near starvation, but I became the second cellist at the Folies Marigny, performing can-can music in the orchestra pit, allowing us to survive. After the difficult winter, we returned to Barcelona, where I taught at the Municipal School of Music and played principal cello at at the opera. Having saved enough money, I returned to Paris with an introductory letter from Count de Morphy to Maestro Charles de Lamoureux.
The aging maestro was preoccupied at his desk and appeared annoyed at being interrupted for this special audition. After a few phrases of the Lano concerto, he dropped his pen, swiveled his chair, and facing Pau cautiously rose to his feet. After completing the concerto, the maestro threw his arms around me, saying, "My child, you are one of the elite," and engaged him to play the Lano at the Lamoureux Orchestra opening concert, a turning point in his career. Paul revolutionized the techniques of bowing and fingering, revealing a range of phrasing, intonation, and expressiveness that had not previously been thought possible, and made the cello an instrument of high purpose.
By the age of 13, I began simplifying cello technique. To make it more natural, I freed the arms. Formerly, cellists played in a very artificial posture, all cramped up. They used to keep their elbows close to their sides. Teachers made their students hold a book under the bowing arm while practicing. Violinists used to do the same.
Your wafting movements with both arms remind me of a bird soaring gently in a tranquil sky, freeing the
And the left hand fingering. Cellists would consistently move the hand, sliding it up and down the fingerboard. By opening up the fingers, I could now play 4 notes without moving my hand. Everything flows and phrases can be sustained much more easily. It's really quite a simple thing. So and spending my free time at my childhood home in San Salvador. Free time, freedom, freedom from authoritarian rule by egomaniacal tyrants. Years later, my childhood home was seized by the Franco regime until I paid a ransom of 1,000,000 pesetas. My first conducting experience at age 16 was when Enrique Granados asked me to direct the premiere of his first opera, Maria del Carmen. Playing the cello has brought me great joy throughout my life. Yet when conducting, I find the orchestra the greatest of all instruments. Knowing the bad habits of orchestral musicians, my first preoccupation was to create an atmosphere to awaken and reinforce their sense of responsibility, so that each player could feel like a soloist. I did not mind repeating an explanation as often as necessary, as it seems that if the conductor is convinced, he ought to find a means of convincing the orchestra. A fine orchestra is not magically built overnight. If necessary, we would not simply rehearse one phrase at a time, but note by note to reveal the true essence of the music, a revelation to the orchestra that bonded us. It is also essential to invite guest conductors to work with the orchestra to further expand their horizons. We also invited distinguished guest soloists to perform with the orchestra.
Yes, and it is important to point out that it was through your concertizing that you personally spent $300,000 in this endeavor until the ensemble became self-supporting.
That is true, but the money was not important. Music, the art of making music with and for human beings, elevates the spirit. Music affirms creativity as an essential element of being human. Many were less fortunate than I, so it was natural for me to create the Working Man's Concert Association. published a monthly magazine with articles by the membership. When one looks about at the miraculous diversity of this universe, at the miraculous world where each person is like an individual leaf, how can one help but believe in something greater than oneself that cannot be described?
Paul's friend King Alfonso traveled to Barcelona in 1929 to attend a concert of the orchestra Pau Casals with Pau as soloist. In a previous speech, the king supported the 18th century monarch Philip V, who was detested in Catalonia because he deprived the region of its ancestral privileges. Upon entering the concert hall, King Alfonso received a nice reception from the audience. But when Pau appeared on stage, he received a standing ovation by the cheering crowd as someone shouted, "If that is our king, then Pau is our emperor!" The entire audience began chanting the phrase for quite some time.
However, even though the king was affronted, and I am certainly not pro-monarchy, the king is my friend from my formative years, and that bond lasted the test of time. A few months later, I was invited to perform at the Palacio de Oriente in Madrid at an official reception for the King and Queen of Italy. At the post-concert reception, King Alfonso and I had a most friendly 20-minute conversation, reminiscing about our youthful times at the palace. At one point, the king, referring to the incident in Barcelona, said,
Well, Pau, I want to tell you how happy I was to see how the Catalonians love you.
We both laughed, knowing at what remained unsaid. While we were different figures on contrary paths, it is ironic that we would both be in exile within just a few years.
Was never a political party member. Democracy surged in his veins. In 1931, Alfonso abdicated the throne, and the Spanish Republic emerged, restoring considerable autonomy to Catalonia.
In addition to freedom, the Republic created overdue reforms that elevated the status and disproportionate roles of the army and the church over citizen rights through Spain.
Catalonian culture, including our dialect, was re-established. You were happy to serve as the president of Catalonia's Music Council, which fostered greater musical vitality throughout the region, including a substantial increase in funding for music education in the schools. Singing societies flourished, and prizes for Catalonian composers were established, along with the founding of the Conservatory of Music.
But alas, only 5 years later, in July of 1936, while we were rehearsing Beethoven's Ninth Symphony for a performance of the celebration for peace in the world, we received word that an insurrection had broken out against our republic, and an attack on Barcelona by Franco's army was imminent. We had just reached the finale, leading into the Ode to Joy. Putting down my baton, I said to the orchestra, I do not know when we shall meet again, so I propose that we finish the symphony now as our farewell to each other. And we did. This unforgettable experience remains emblazoned in my heart.
Pau presented numerous benefit concerts abroad, raising relief funds for the loyalists.
How could I, who come from peasant stock, help but be in sympathy with the people, with the republic? I am an artist, but in the practice of my art, I am also, after all, a manual worker, and have been all my life.
My steadfast loyalist resistance held out in Barcelona, where Pau returned in 1937, presenting several benefit concerts. During one of the performances, an aerial bombardment occurred. The audience took shelter, but Pau remained on siege with his beloved cello, playing a Bach suite.
I saw such things, such things. To this day I cannot dare to think of them.
In 1938, during a broadcast of one of his Barcelona concerts, Pau issued a desperate prophetic appeal to the democratic nations of the world.
Do not commit the crime of letting the Spanish Republic be murdered. If you allow Hitler to win Spain, you will be the next victim of his madness. The war will spread to all of Europe, and then to the whole world. Come and always free, the first people to establish a constitutional parliament, even before the British. During the Renaissance we were a great nation that included all the Mediterranean parts of Spain, southern Italy and Greece. Yes, this is the lifeblood of Catalonia. It surges within me even now. A king never ruled Catalonia until it became part of Spain. We Catalonians will always remember that we were a great independent nation, people who worked hard and yet now to build a little bridge near my little village of Vendrell, we must pay Madrid officials bribes. The Catalonian temperament is hard-working, honest, imaginative, and idealistic. At the core of my being, I am a Catalonian peasant. It is not within my heart nor conscience to be ruled by a king or a dictator.
During those years in self-imposed exile, how inspired Catalans! If Generalissimo Franco had been defeated, and the wish to form an autonomous state granted, there is no doubt there would have been a groundswell of support to nominate Casals by acclamation to be the president. How fled to Paris, yet his despondency was overwhelming. For 2 weeks with shutters closed, he remained in his room, grieving for his beloved homeland, his family, and his war-torn country. How returned to the French Catalonian region at the base of Mount Canigó, we lived through the turbulent years of the Second World War. From his hotel room, thousands of letters requesting food and clothing for the war-torn refugees, suffering in the dead of winter. How travel from camp to camp, delivering truckloads of supplies to his compatriots.
They have shown such dignity, such nobility, despite all that has happened to them.
In 1945, when Hitler and Mussolini met their demise, Franco and his regime remained in power.
Profoundly disillusioned at the Allies' moral betrayal of not ousting Franco, I cancelled my remaining that terrible anxiety. It is worst of all when I am playing solo, when I play a duet with a pianist. There is less pain, and still less when I play with a chamber group, as I can share the responsibility with the others. Best of all is when I don't play but conduct. Anxiety aside, it has been a great privilege and a great joy to share this art with listeners.
Perhaps it's your emotional connection with each composition that triggered an acute sense of responsibility when sharing music with the public.
The Broadest Festival performance was for the people and art. Since that day, I have not performed a commercial engagement. In 1958, the year after my heart attack, Albert Schweitzer and I presented our manifesto at the United Nations, calling on the leaders of Russia and the United States to halt the arms race and nuclear testing. I presented these remarks to the General Assembly. If at my age I have come here for this day, it is not because anything has changed in my moral attitude or in the restrictions I have imposed upon myself and my career as an artist for all these years, not because today all else becomes secondary to the great and perhaps mortal danger threatening all humanity. Afterwards, Albert told me it is better to create than protest. My reply was simple: why not do both, create and protest?
Soon afterward, Secretary General de Gaulle invited Pau to perform at the 13th anniversary of the United Nations while Spain was still under Franco's
impossible. Today the United Nations represents the most important hope for peace. Let us give it all the power to act for our benefit.
In June 1963, John Fitzgerald Kennedy established the Supreme Civilian Order, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Pau Casals was an inaugural recipient. That same year, Pau was again invited to the United Nations by Secretary General Udow to conduct Pau's imprisonment, performed by the Casals Festival Orchestra and the Cleveland Orchestra Choir. The oratorio was premiered earlier in Volgo, composed with gratitude for Mexico's welcoming Spanish exiles. Pau was passionately engaged with the Casals Festival Orchestra. Rehearsals and concerts were held in San Juan. The orchestra was comprised of the finest musicians from the major symphony orchestras. On one first rehearsal of a new festival season, Robert Schumann's Fourth Symphony was the first work to be rehearsed. After the initial chord, Pau interrupted by rubbing his baton on the podium.
Very well, very well.
The returning musicians, some dating back to the inaugural season, recognized that things were not very well.
Dear friends, please let us shade the chord with a more rapid diminuendo from fortissimo to pianissimo, which will give the chord a more mysterious portent and enable the pianissimo theme played by the second violins to be heard more clearly. does not sound well. We must do a little something more. Do not be faithful to the notes. Be faithful always to the music. Be faithful to Schumann. Don't be faithful to feel. Trust your feelings.
At the 1982 performance of El Presempre in San Francisco, Pau unveiled his Peace Crusade, which began a series of performances worldwide. Pau realized that music was his sole weapon in preventing global annihilation. Financial profits were placed in a fund to defend human dignity, brotherhood, and world peace.
Music, that wonderful universal language, should be a source of communication among human beings. I once again exhort you, my fellow musicians throughout the world, to put the purity of your heart at the service of humankind, to unite people in fraternal ties. With this objective in mind, I consider it my duty to offer my humble contribution as a personal crusade. Let each of us contribute as one can until this ideal is attained in all its glory. And let us unify our fervent prayers that in the near future all humanity